Hey guys, welcome to my channel, welcome to my stream, and welcome to another chapter 3 I believe, working on our little hot rod here, the custom Model A pickup by Revell. And I'll run our intro and we'll get started. Okay guys, we are back. And we're going to continue on. Last time we were working on our front and rear suspension, I guess you could say, our front and rear axles, as I drop it and try and break it. Our front one is done. That's this guy here. He's all done. And I did a bunch of work on our rear. Okay, so remember last time I had to narrow the rear end on this one in order to get the big fat tires that we're putting on this guy in there. And so I did some measurements. I basically took the old rear end out of the 66 Nova and kind of measured it up and lined it up like that as best as I could to get it the same width, because this turns out to be the exact perfect width I need to get the tires to fit underneath our wheel wells, kind of like this. And yeah, so as you can see, obviously I have ground away the inside of the fender wells here, and I did have to get rid of that little crossbar. There's a little frame support that's going right across in here and in here. I did have to remove that in order to get these to fit in there like this. Okay, the next thing I am going to have to do is our bucket that's going to be going on the back here like this. I'm going to have to drill this out. I'm going to have to Dremel out the sides of this too on each side to get the tires, because they're gonna hit, right? Because if the bucket, I leave the bucket like this, as you can see, it's like that, and our tire, well, she ain't gonna fit, right? So yeah, just do that and do a little test, and yeah, now the tire's sticking out of the fender well, and that won't do. So that's gonna be, I'll do that off camera again. Just like I did with this, I did it off camera, because, well, dremeling is dremeling. It's like saying, hey, I'm gonna show you guys how to use an X-Acto knife, and I'm gonna start carving. It's useless, right? Everyone knows how to use a knife, and anybody can just turn on a Dremel and start going meow, meow. So anyway, so back to this rear end. So I trimmed the axles down a lot shorter, and I also did the same with our leaf spring suspension. Trimmed off each edge and glued the tabs back on and got that lined up. I also had to cut these rods, cut them off here, shorten them, and then put them back on. And that's what I've got left now. There's my rear axle. I also took the steel rod and I have CA glued it into the one wheel here, so I can slide this in there like this. And we'll use CA glue later on to get the other one on, and that's what we're going to have, just like this. And that is going to fit in here like so, and our wheels are going to be just tucked inside the wheel wells like that. And that's what we're going to have for our rear end. Okay, when that time comes. We're not there yet, we're not going to be doing that yet, so just showing you guys what's coming up. The other thing I did is I glued our transmission onto the back of our engine, and so I just glued that about 5 minutes ago. So yeah, and she's going to be sitting in there something like this at some point, a big honking engine sitting in there. Anyway, let's see what is next on the assembly front for what we're going to do. I'll change the camera. It looks like we're going to be starting on our frame next. And so we'll change the camera here and we'll get working on it, shall we? Alright, so with the engine all done, that was all steps. So if I just go back, we got our suspension done, and then we started building the engine, and we've got that finished off. Okay, engine is done, so now we're going to work on our frame. So we got the frame, and it says here to these little funky things at the front here, if you don't want to use the stock bumper, you remove these. Now the stock bumper, I believe, is this big chrome thing right here. And of course, if you're looking at the picture, they didn't use it. I like the look of that, so I don't think I'm going to use the front bumper. So, that being said, we're going to remove these guys. Okay. Kind of right at the frame here. Bing. Bang. Those guys are gone now. I'll just kind of clean them up and make it look a little more natural here. Okay, there we go. So those are trimmed. That was nice and easy. We're going to do rear shock absorbers. We got shock absorbers. I didn't know that. Rear shock absorbers and front shock absorbers, 2 each. Part 41 and 42, and they go onto the frame. That is weird. 41 and 42. Let's find those on our sprues. And let me change my glasses here. It's kind of interesting. Shock absorbers on the frame like this. Let's see, are they over here? I don't think so. I believe this is all just engine parts. This kit is a challenge in that just finding the parts on the sprues. I think that's going to be these guys here. These guys here on this sprue. I think that's these. Let me see. Yeah, these are 42, these are 41. Okay. The reason I keep saying it's a challenge is because Revell, when they molded these, they didn't mold the numbers on the things, on the runners, not a crisp mold at all. Which is possible that, maybe it's old tooling, and that's why it's not very precise. Nothing is fitting super precisely on this. So these are 42. The short ones are 42. Okay. So it looks like 42 goes at the front. So that's this. So they want it to line up on that little tab there. Like this. It's really misleading, because they show it going down over top, and yet unless it's out like this. Get this guy on here. Fits a little looser than the other side, so I've got to use a... And why does it keep freezing? What is with my system? I might have to reboot my computer. I just might have to reboot my computer. I don't know why I'm getting freezing like that. So there's our 2 front shock absorbers. They look like guns. Pew, pew, pew. Yeah. Then we have our rears. Our rears are going to go back here on these tabs. And they're going to face the opposite direction. They're going to go like this. It's very possible that my frame and how this all goes together is not going to work with my narrowed rear end. I might have to notch some of this out. I don't know exactly how this is all going to go in. Maybe this goes like that. Yeah, see, we're going to have an issue. The tab on the top of our leaf spring, right in the middle there, is supposed to go into that, right in there. It doesn't even fit. In any case, it's supposed to go in like that, and our frame is sticking out further. But we're going to have a big honking wheel here, which means my shock absorber is going to go away because the wheel's going to go right there and it'd be right on it. So the rear shock absorbers will be non-existent because this part of the frame is going to be cut out and disappear. What I should do is think about narrowing it. I don't know why that tab don't fit in there. Maybe the hole is not big enough. Let's just make sure that fits. There's a little button right on the top of the leaf spring, and that should go right into that hole, but it's not. Oh, I know why. I just figured out why. My rotors are not. They're hitting the frame. My rotors are hitting the frame. So I'm just going to make a little reference here, get this centered. Yeah, really. And let's do a mark here. Like this. And a mark here. So I know where I've got to cut the frame. And that also means I know exactly the center point of the axle. So I can just kind of put that there like this for my reference, right in front of our little peg. Right there. Right here is where, so I'm just going to scrape away the paint. This whole back part needs to go away. And roughly the same distance on this side. There we go. This has to go away. And unfortunately, the whole frame, this section here, bing, has to go. Now, if I put this on here, it's actually more of the axle, more of that rear end has to go. So close. Even my bars here, I don't know what they call them, torsion bars, maybe? They just barely clear the tire. In fact, if the tire's not perfectly straight, it does rub. Anyway, that's how it sits, and so I'm actually going to need a little bit more off of this, but that's not too bad. Which means this whole section is going to go unless I get some other styrene and kind of make my own little inner frame here to tie it together. Which I could do. I've got styrene. I could actually keep the pieces I cut out here and kind of utilize them and put them inboard a little bit. But that's a lot of measuring and stuff that I don't want to do right now today. That's not my plan for today. Okay? So, but at least for now, I'm not putting on our rear shock absorbers. But I can do our pitman shaft and our battery case, number 43 and 44. That's these two guys here. So it's kind of funny, we've got a battery case, but not a battery. It's also a very unique spot to put the battery. Usually it's under the hood. But I suppose on a vehicle like this, back then, didn't really have a lot of room under the hood. The hood's pretty narrow. Okay, so we get this in the right way. The battery case actually goes in from underneath, like this. Nowadays, we would call it a battery box. So put that like that. Put a little bit of glue on there. go, there's our box. And I just realized I do have battery detail up top here. 3 little buttons and a couple of little things. So I could actually put, I don't know, depending on how exposed this is on the truck, I could run some battery wire, put a battery wire there and there kind of thing, and do a positive and negative on it. But that's going to depend on just how much detail there is. Okay, so our pitman shaft, this guy here is supposed to go into this little notch. Right in here. And it fits nice and tight, so that's a nice thing, but I gotta clean up my nub on here. Get that nice and smooth on there. Okay. Put him back in his home. There we go. A bit of glue. There we go. Okay, so that's done. And that's step 27. Flip our book over. There is just a strengthening bar that was right about here. I've already removed that. Oh no, that's on the different spot. This is done. Frame is done. We go to this, the body. There was a bar going across here, and that's done. So basically, I wonder how many times I say the word basically. I was editing my last video and I noticed I say basically a lot. So they don't really show exactly, they kind of show 2 pins here and here lining up where the frame is on here, and yet I don't see any holes where they're supposed to go. So this really is kind of a guess. They're the only 2 pins on the whole frame. There's no other pins. There's no locator pins. Although the frame does sit kind of, this angle here sits right into this notch, like that. Just like that. And that's where this frame sits. And that's it. Now, because of the lack of locator pins or holes at the back, they just kind of, pins just kind of sit in between little notches, little frame notches at the back, and that's it. And that's how she's going to sit in there. So that does give me a lot of freedom to do some cutting in here, trim this off, and just kind of rework this whole section here in the back to be more of a narrowed frame, because our engine is going to sit. I want to see how it's supposed to go here. Our transmission tabs are supposed to line up. Let's remove this. Transmission tabs are supposed to line up on this, so that drops down in, which means I need to get rid of this part of the frame on the front right here for the oil pan to drop in. Otherwise our engine is going to sit at a funny angle. But I do want to support it at the front. This is supposed to really drop down, I think. Yeah, like that. So there's our current setup. The engine is not quite at the right angle. That ain't gonna work. So I got a choice. I either cut the oil pan or I cut the frame. I would rather cut the frame because we still have another ledge for the pulley to sit down on. So let's scratch in here the width of our oil pan. Right there. And right there. Okay. So I'm just going to trim like this. I don't need to Dremel it or anything. Just need to be fairly straight. Just do this. And then do this. And use our knife and score this here. So that we can kind of pry this center section up. It's my little pliers. Need my little pliers. There we go. Do a test. Almost, but not quite. Very close. And it appears I don't have it quite straight. But I'm close. I am close there. Oh, so close. So close yet so far away. A little bit more. Again, it's close, but not quite. Oh, now I'm hitting there, so I am through. How's my angle now? Still nowhere near because I'm now hitting here where the fan belt's going to go. So we have that to determine now. It's going to be, the fan belt's going to drop through here. And I think this is actually where the rad is supposed to mount. So I want to keep this notch. I don't think I'm going to be able to get the rad in there, guys. Just the nature of how forward this engine sits. They definitely didn't design this car for a V8. That is for sure. We'll see how that fits. Okay, so we have the front of the block now sitting on the frame, but our engine is still at a really funny angle, and that's not even where the transmission is supposed to sit. transmission isn't even on its mount yet. I keep getting blocked by this little nub right here. There we go. Okay, yeah, we're still at a really funny angle, which means I think a good 90% of this frame is going to have to go. So although the pan is going through, this notch here has got to go. Which really does suck. I don't want to really get rid of the whole frame on the front here. Maybe just a little bit. We'll see about maybe just taking out half of it. Might have to do some carving. And just shave it down. Like this. Okay, now it's a little difficult to get in there, but we can. I do want to retain the frame because it actually gives the engine something to sit on. I want the engine to sit on the frame. I don't want to have no frame at all and the engine is kind of floating. But in doing that, you need to be careful. Let's give this a little test fit. Okay, a little test fit on this piece here. Drop our tranny in. Now where the engine sits, I need to widen up this hole to get it to sit down. I'd like to get this part actually down in that channel. So to do that, this has to be here. And here. Oh. So, let's get that shape smooth. Might be time for me to get a new X-Acto blade in there. There's a lot of sections on this knife seem to be really dull. See how that fits now. That down in there. There we go. We're almost there. Need just a little bit wider. Need to go a little bit wider on our vertical. Hey, there we are. Now we're still not quite there. But I've got that sitting right there on that front part. And like I said, I don't want to totally get rid of the frame. I want to keep the frame. I could get rid of the front of the frame and have it just sitting on the side of the oil pan. Or if I widen it up enough, I can have it just sitting on the side of the block. But once I get past the oil pan here on this side, there's nothing for it to sit on. But I could, in theory, trim that oil pan section right in here. I could get rid of our oil pan bolt like this, shave that off. Got to be a little careful while I'm working on the engine here because of our shifters. The shifter and the emergency brake handle. And I can get rid of these 4 oil pan bolts on the front. It's not a detail that's going to be seen because it's right over the frame. So that's going to give me, it doesn't give me a lot, but it gives me an extra millimeter to drop down. Let's just clean those up, get that smooth. Because it's almost there. That's definitely looking better than it was. We're looking almost straight now. See that? We're looking almost straight. It's not perfect, but it's close. And I think that's all right. I think we can deal with that. It's too wide to fit through there. I might have to put the engine in after. We are still pretty tight on the frame here, so I do want to just see if I can just do a little bit of hairline adjustment on this. Just to even if it's sitting on a 1/2 millimeter piece of styrene, that's perfect. Because then it's still at least held on by something. That illusion of a frame under the engine. It's a little bit thinner now. I want to widen this just a hair. Okay, let's see this guy. Yeah, just that little bit of a hair of adjustment from the filing is perfect. perfect. Now it slides in there nice. But I'm going to have to put the frame on first. Get this lined up in there. And then drop this down. Like that. Because our valve covers are, the whole engine is way too big. I definitely ain't going to be putting the hood on this car. In fact, where is my bucket? The body bucket, this guy. This is going to somehow sit like this. It sits just like that. My blower is going to be right against the firewall. I believe this sits just like that. Feels like two pins there line up at the back here. I could be wrong, I'm not sure exactly how it fits. But yeah, it's going to be close. It's going to be a close fit anyway. Yeah. But before I do any gluing like that, I've got to figure out a paint job on this, right? Because now we're starting sort of assembly of all of this stuff. I've got to re-glue my shock absorber back on the front here. Because of our next step basically is to assemble it all, but I haven't painted this yet, and I got to paint this guy first. Okay. This guy needs to be painted. I need to get rid of some nubs on there. This needs a lot of cleaning up. Right? We got a lot of cleanup work to do on this. Because painting is an important thing. I believe I've decided to paint this a color that is basically a very deep red that's almost black. I think that would be an interesting color choice. I don't want to go bright red like the box art, but I think I want to go, I'm going to test out a couple of things. I got to test, okay? Because I want to do a dark red, a red so dark that it's almost black, but yet you can tell it actually is red. That's kind of the thing I'm going for. You could say maybe a super dark maroon, that kind of a thing. In saying that, I think I'm going to try I'm going to get the paint that I'm thinking of here. Let me grab it just a sec here. The paint that I have in mind, Pro Scale Candy Ruby, is what I'm thinking of doing, but doing it over black. This is a candy paint, so normally you do candy over a silver, right? You get a really nice bright silver, and then you put your candy color over that, and depending on how thick of your coats, depends on how dark it gets. But you still only get to a certain darkness, right? So basically the darkest this would ever get over a silver is basically the color that you see in the bottle here. But that's still very, very red. I want to go more even darker with it, and that's why I'm thinking of testing it out over the black. In fact, I think I could do a test right now. I'll fire up my air compressor, and I'll just spray the bottom of the box here, just as a test to see if and how much it does cover. I don't think it's going to cover very much at all. I don't think it's going to cover very much at all, which is why I'm just doing a test. With it being candy, the coverage is very minimal. It's very thin. You can spray this stuff straight out of the bottle. Okay, this stuff sprays right out of the bottle. You don't have to worry about thinning it at all, which is nice. So I'll just put a little bit in my airbrush and we'll test it out. You can see what it looks like over the white. It is a very bright red. If I were to spray down, let's say, do a white primer, this would be a very bright red over that. So I wasn't planning on doing this right now in this particular video. That's why I don't have my painting cam set up. But we'll just do so I'm doing a thick wet coat over this, and that's our result, is basically shiny black, which is why I wanted to do this test. Because even though I want a dark red, I think this is just going to look black and not be the color that I want. So I think maybe if I do the car in like maybe a light gunmetal, if I do light gunmetal that's almost silver, but it's going to be darker, and I might have an easier time getting the dark red that I want. I'm going to do some experiments on my paint mule. My paint mule being an F-15 wing. As you can see, I've done different tests on this thing, but this is black, so that's good. I can use this as a test. You know what, guys? I'm going to do all this testing off camera. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to do some testing on my airplane wing here. See what it looks like over the gunmetal before I'm actually going on this. This is actually a good idea to test on something that's totally different before you actually go to your actual model that you're going to be testing on. But this is where I'm going to leave it for today, guys. Obviously, I got to do a bunch of paint testing before I do this. I'll get it painted and or at least a base coat done, and yeah, we'll move on and we'll do that. So this is where I'm going to leave it today, guys. I want to thank you for watching. Thanks for all the support, and we'll see you all in the next one.